Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can I welcome everybody to this policy committee meeting at Pendle Borough Council. My name is Councillor Mohammed Iqbal. I'm leader of the council and I'll be chairing this meeting. I'm just going to do a roll call of councillors. If you're here, if you can just indicate by saying that you're present, and then I know who's here and who's not. And then I propose to go through the speakers that we've got for the various items this evening, just to make sure that they are here, and then we'll proceed with the meeting. So I'll call the councillors' names out first. If you can just respond, and once you've responded, please, you can just put yourselves on mute. Thank you. Councillor Nadeem Ahmed.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Musaba Arshad.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor David Clegg.
Present.
Thank you. Sarah Coburn Price, I can see. She's smiling at me, so she's here. Councillor Tommy Cooney.
Yeah.
David, I'm struggling. David, I'm struggling.
Somebody's got their mic on. If you can just mute yourself, please.
I can't get it off so that the audio works.
That's Sarah, I think. Sarah, if you can hear me, you need to put yourself on mute. We just heard your domestic there. Next, I've got Councillor Mike Goulthorpe.
Present.
Thank you. I've got Julie Henderson.
Present.
Thank you. Myself, I'm present. Yasser Iqbal.
Yes.
Thank you. Ashjad.
Yes, present.
Thank you. Brian, have you joined us? Brian Newman.
We'll try and get him on, Iqbal.
All right, thanks, Joanne. Councillor Jonathan Nixon.
Yeah, I'm here.
Cheers, Johnette. And finally, Councillor David Whip, I can see.
Yeah.
That's fine. So we're just waiting for Councillor Brian Newman to join us. So if Joanne, once he's joined us, hopefully if you can let me know. Can I just check in terms of the speakers? If you're here, if you can just indicate, please, that you're here, and then just put yourself back on mute. Mr. Mike O'Brien.
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you. Robin Willerbeck.
Yes. Can you hear?
Thank you. Becky Morell.
Yes, present.
Thank you. Then I've got Daniel Hughes.
Yes, here.
Thank you. I've got Daisy Whitehouse.
I'm speaking on behalf of today. Well, I'm not. She's given a statement. I think Joanne is aware of that. We spoke earlier today, so I was just going to read out a statement from herself. She's the application.
Cheers, Daniel. And then I've got also indicating to speak our other councillors. I've got Councillor Ken Turner, who said he was joining.
Good evening.
That's fine. Thank you, Ken. Can I just check everybody's on mute, please? Because somebody's not, and we can hear some background conversation. So I'd be grateful if you could just put yourselves on mute. That's fine. Thank you very much. So item 1, colleagues, is declarations of interest. Has anybody got any declarations of interest to declare on any item that's appearing on the agenda? No, nobody's declared any interest. Item 2 is public question time. Is there any member of the public that's on this call, on this meeting, who wishes to ask a question on an item that's not on the agenda?
No, we're not aware of any public questions.
Okay, thank you, Joanne. I'll move then on to item 3, which is the minutes of the last meeting held on the 23rd of July. I'll move those as a correct record.
I'll second them.
Thank you, David. Everybody content?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I'll take the planning applications as they are. I mean, the first 2 we've got speakers for. So the first planning application that I've got is item 4A, which is the erection of 129 dwellings and associated roads at the former Barnsley shed in Barnoldswick for Seddon Homes Limited. Mike, you've indicated to speak. You've got up to a maximum of 5 minutes in which to address the committee. I can't then bring you back into the discussion unless a councillor wants to ask you a direct question. So Mike O'Brien, the floor is yours for the next 5 minutes.
Sorry. Good evening all. The application site comprises the site of the former Barnsley Mill and is located to the east of the settlement of Barnoldswick. Longing Lane is located to the north and the canal forms the western boundary of the site. Barnoldswick is a key service centre with a full range of facilities, and the application site is within walking distance of the centre. Outline planning permission was granted in 2017 for a residential development of up to 148 dwellings. Access was also agreed to reuse the historic access points for the former mill. The officer's report at the outline stage confirmed that the scheme provided an accessible and sustainable location and would contribute towards the delivery of the council's 5-year housing land supply. The principle of the development is therefore acceptable, and the current scheme proposes 129 new dwellings. So just moving on to the scheme, the submitted layout plan has sought to build upon the key concepts agreed at outline stage, which is to create a layout which accommodates high quality, affordable and sustainable homes and allow for substantial areas of both public and private open space. The proposed development will comprise a range of house types and materials that are sympathetic to the context and surroundings of the site. And since the scheme was submitted, the houses along the canal have been amended so as to address the towpath and the canal visually and at the optimum height. And it's this that has allowed for the addition of several connection points as requested by the LCC and the Canal Rivers Trust into the canal towpath. The existing trees and the stone wall that are located along the boundary will be retained so as to maintain the character and setting of the area. And the existing palisade fencing that is actually located along the canal towpath will be replaced with landscaping, which should improve the appearance of the site. All of the properties will be provided with the required number of parking spaces as confirmed by LCC, and the principal access route through the site will be adopted. The application proposes to provide affordable housing on site, and the design and materials proposed for the units will ensure that they are indistinguishable from the market houses. So just moving on to some technical matters. At the outline stage, it was concluded that with a suitable layout and dwelling design to include thicker glazing and ventilation, the acceptable noise levels could be provided for occupants of the proposed housing. And a noise report has been submitted, as noted in the late agenda, which shows that acceptable noise levels can be provided in all internal areas as well as back gardens. And that's without the need for noise barriers along the canal, which is something that the Town Council response in the report noted, and they're not actually required. The submitted tree survey confirms that where possible, existing trees are proposed to be retained, and this includes the trees around the edge and those that comprise the field boundary down the centre of the site. And any tree losses will be mitigated for and satisfactorily replaced, and a landscape plan has been submitted which shows that 192 new trees will be planted around the site. The matter of flood risk was also considered in principle at the outline stage, and as confirmed in the report, the lead local flood authority is satisfied that the risk of flooding both on and off the site would not be unacceptable. And it's the subject to requirements of relevant conditions which will be agreed prior to the commencement of any development. We submitted some additional information which confirms that the surface water outfall will remain in the same location, and it's proposed that the stored water will be released at 40 litres a second, which is well below the equivalent of Greenfield runoff rates. And the excess surface water will be stored in pipes under the development, and which is to be adopted by United Utilities. As some of you will know, the Bowker drain, which runs under the site, is very, very old, around the edge of the canal, and effectively no longer functions. And it's for this reason that the fields are storing water at the lowest lying point in the southeast, and not because of its natural storage feature. And there are actually legal powers that compel landowners to undertake works that maintain the flow of a watercourse. And it's therefore proposed to create a cut-off drain which will feed into the existing culverts, which are proposed to be repaired all at the expense of the applicant. So with regards to ecology, the submitted report confirms that the existing grassland habitats to be lost are of limited value, and the proposed development has the potential to provide significantly higher value habitats for wildlife than are currently present. And the principal area of public open space has been located centrally and specifically designed to retain the central hedgerow and link the canal with the Little Cut Nature Reserve to the north of the site. The areas of open space are located around the site, including an area by the entrance, and assist in providing links to the canal. There's also access to a children's play area on the opposite side of the road from the development, and the recreational opportunities offered by the canal are also located immediately adjacent to the site. So just finish with some of the benefits. There are numerous socio-economic and environmental benefits arising from the proposed development, and the provision of high quality homes which meet lifetime home requirements, which will help meet the needs of the disabled and growing elderly population within the borough. There's improvements to connectivity, both ecologically across the site, as well as for pedestrians and cyclists accessing the canal. And the scheme will remediate an area of contaminated land and provide new public open spaces. And welcome any questions.
Thank you very much for that, Mike. Appreciate your keeping to the time. Before I bring in councillors, Alex, you circulated a report earlier, an updated report. Is there anything that you need to add to that report at this stage?
No, there's nothing at this stage. Everything's covered in the report.
Okay, thanks for that, Alex. Okay, I've got Councillor David Whip indicated to speak. David?
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a question for Mike O'Brien. Obviously, I want to come in when we've dealt with questions, but if I can put this up on screen, it's not appearing, so what I was wanting to show was the drainage plan, and I don't know whether Mike can put it up on screen, and he could indicate where he thinks the Bowker drain lies. I can see Mike looking nervous now.
Let's see if I can find the plan.
I'll just see whether I can get it up. I've pulled it off the. I'll just see whether I can do it again. Here it is. I think you should be able to see the drainage plan now.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll run my cursor. I mean, you might not be able to see the this area here in the centre. It talks about the existing Bowker drain connection. So, does the Bowker drain run to the southeast?
I think this is part of the work which is conditioned and is mentioned within the flood risk assessment. This is the kind of exploratory work which would need to be done, and no commencement could be done until this work has been agreed by the parties that are required to assess it.
Okay, so you're not quite sure where the Bowker drain runs?
That work would form part of the condition. That's the work and exploratory work that needs to be done.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. That's the end of my question.
Okay. Is there any other councillor that wants to ask a question of Mike at this stage? No. David, did you want to come back in at this stage, or?
Yeah, yes, please, Chairman. I don't think we have any argument with the development of the brownfield part of the site. As has been pointed out, the principle has been decided, and it has got outline approval. At outline stage, the issue of the lower part of the site, which is to the southeast, was considered, and the planning manager, Mr. Watson, said, well, it's got outline consent for the whole site, but it may be that some parts of it are undevelopable. And if I can just put up that drainage plan again. The Mike was saying that he thought that the Bowker drain ran in a southeasterly direction. In fact, the Bowker drain was a drain that was constructed well before the canal was built, and it ran underneath the canal when the canal was constructed, and it runs in a northwesterly direction underneath the buildings of Moss Shed, and eventually it goes into Stock Beck. And it was constructed to steal water from the watershed that, I'll just leave that plan up. The watershed is around about here on Longing Lane, and the bridge over the canal there is a crossover bridge where the canal crosses the watershed, and the towpath is constructed on the downhill side of that watershed. I'll just get rid of that one. The Bowker drain was used to, in effect, steal water from one side of the watershed and take it through to the opposite side for the purpose of the mills in the area. And there's a clue to the nature of the land with the place names that we have in that area. Ings, and this is a development of Long Ing. Ings is a word of Norse origin, and it refers to water meadows or marshes. On the opposite side of the canal, we've got Moss Shed, and moss is Old English for a peat bog. So the developers have stated that it's not a case that the water isn't the land isn't naturally waterlogged and prone to flooding, but that it's a case of the Bowker drain being inadequate and broken down. In fact, this land has been water meadows or a marsh or a peat bog since the last ice age, and the Bowker drain runs nowhere near where Mr. O'Brien has just indicated that it does. I'll put you a couple of pictures up of the area. First of all, this is the development site immediately behind this row of trees and extending to the right of the picture. That's the boundary wall.
Brian Newman.
That's the boundary wall along here, and you can see the extensive flooding that there is in this area here, which extends into the development site. And I'll just put another picture up showing the view from within the site. So this was taken on the same day. It's from within the site, looking from the perimeter of the old Barnsley shed area, which is at a higher level. And you can see the extensive waterlogging here, which then extends right along. And the whole of this area is in effect a floodplain that's on the watershed. So this is where water collects and drains away slowly through Salterforth towards Earby. Now, in Earby, there are considerable problems of flooding. The Environment Agency is proposing to construct upstream storage areas so as to provide flood alleviation to Earby at the cost of many millions of pounds. Here we have a natural water storage area that would cease to be such a storage area by virtue of this development. And the way in which an intercept drain is intended to carry the water and then, not quite sure who that was.
Oh, wait a minute.
Somebody that's ending with the phone number 437.
On my mobile.
I think it's probably Brian.
Councillor Newman, are you with us now on the telephone?
No, it's right. Go on, David. Keep
right. So the intercept drain would have the effect of putting water into the drainage system at a much faster rate than it ponding in this area and then flowing down slowly. And
right.
Right. That would have the impact further down of accelerating the flow of water. I note in the reports on the Pendle Council website that there is no comment from the Earby and Salterforth Internal Drainage Board. The whole of this area is subject to the provisions of the Earby and Salterford Internal Drainage Board, and they have very strict rules about the introduction of faster flows of water. So taking all that together, we have a position where we've got flooding in Earby, we've got water storage here, which currently reduces the risk of flooding in Earby, and we have a proposal that would accelerate the flow of water in that direction and into the Ayr catchment. So, Chairman, in short, I think that this is utterly unacceptable. I don't think that there is any adequate way of addressing the water that we've currently got there, and the way in which it impacts on the communities downstream. So I'm more than happy for
Brian
the rest
Newman.
of the. I'm more
He's
than
now
happy.
exiting.
I'm more than happy for the rest of the development to go ahead, but really we need to condition out the development on this floodplain, and I think that's what we ought to be doing this evening.
Okay, thanks for that, David. Just before I bring anybody else in, Alex, can I just ask a question of yourself? In terms of the comments that David has made, what's your response as the planning officer tonight?
Yeah, through you, Chair. My response is that the Lead Local Authority have been consulted on this. They've raised no objections to it. They're perfectly happy with the drainage on the site, subject to the conditions that are imposed on the outline permission and an additional condition for further investigate for the replacement details of the replacement of the land drain. We had very similar issues raised at an appeal at Lower Green Hill caravan site in Salterford, where it was refused by the committee on very similar grounds in terms of concerns about historical flooding on the site, photographs of floods on the site, issues raised in regards to the Internal Drainage Board and their concerns over it, and the impact of downstream flooding in Earby of that development. That went to appeal, and the appeal was allowed, and the inspector awarded costs for taking basically its own position on drainage rather than the expert position of the Lead Local Flood Authority, who'd assessed it and said that the proposal was acceptable. I think this is a very similar case whereby all of the issues that are being raised are either things that are addressed through the conditions, or are matters of civil law to do with drainage, or are matters that are dealt with under land drainage consent with the Internal Drainage Board. So all of these concerns could already be addressed by the conditions and are already addressed by the conditions. So the development is acceptable in terms of drainage.
Okay. I mean, I'll speak, and then if any other colleagues want to come in. I mean, the principle of housing clearly was accepted here a few years ago for outline permission for up to 148 homes. Application is now coming for 129. I think that the comments that David has raised in terms of drainage are valid in one sense, but reading the report and the updated report, and also listening to Mr. O'Brien in terms of the conditions around drainage, I think that those conditions are sufficient for this committee to delegate grant consent to the planning manager, subject to those conditions being met, specifically around drainage, which clearly is a valid concern. And if the exploration work that Mr. O'Brien, as the agent for the applicant, says is done and doesn't satisfy our planning officer or manager or whoever it's delegated to, then clearly the application won't proceed and it'll come back here at some point. So taking on board the comments of what Councillor David Whipper said and what also Alex has said, I'm minded to go with the recommendation that we delegate the grant consent subject to the amended conditions in the amended report. I've got both Alex and David wanting to speak. Just before I bring you in both, I'm just going to ask for a seconder for the recommendation, and then I'll bring David in and then Alex. Is there anybody to second?
Yes, I'll happily second that.
All right, thanks, Chad. Okay, Councillor David Whip. David, you're on mute.
Thank
David.
you. Yeah, thank you, Chairman. You'll gather that I won't be supporting that proposal. The culvert that the applicants thought was the Bowker Drain runs sort of across here, and you can see how much water there is in the whole of this area. Now, in order for that area to be drained and for the culvert to take the water, it would mean that this vast volume of water would then have to travel down to Salterford and then from Salterford through to Earby. The whole point is this is a flood protection area, and you can improve that drain, that culvert across there as much as you like. You can accelerate the flow of water from this area, and then you will dump it into people's homes in Earby. And I'm sorry, but this is a site I've seen for the last 50 years. I mean, this isn't a one-off event. This isn't something that happens once every blue moon. This is a long-standing issue. And I refer you back to the names: Long Ing, Water Meadows, Moss Shed, Peat Bog. This is a marsh. It's water storage area, and it should not be lost for development.
Okay. Alex, you indicated.
Yes, just one point. The updated report is for approval rather than delegate grant consent, because all of the issues have been resolved.
Oh, they're right.
Yeah,
that's fine. Thank you. Just see if there's anybody else. I've got nobody else to.
Chairman, can I come in? It's just I can't seem to put my hand up for some reason. I haven't got the option.
Yeah, go on, Nadine.
Yeah. So, yeah. Thank you for that. Just what interests me in all this debate, listening carefully, is we've got the report on the one hand, which is saying there is an issue, but there isn't an issue. Then we've heard from Councillor David Whip, who's spoken in detail about the site, because obviously he's familiar with it more than I am. And I do genuinely have some serious concerns about development on this site after what David has said. I personally don't know the site like David does. But can I just ask a question, Mr. Chairman? In the report, on page 10, drainage and flood risk, it's mentioning, it should be noted that this is a reserved matters application dealing with the appearance, scale, layout and landscaping of the development only. Am I right in thinking we can't then discuss flooding here? Or am I totally wrong on that point?
Okay. Alex, do you want to respond to that question from Nadine?
Flood risk can be considered only in as much as it relates to the matters that are being considered in this application. So to some extent, layout does relate to flood risk. However, as I've noted before, the report's fully satisfy the League Local Flood Authority, who are our expert consultees on this, and the issues that have been raised, and the concerns that were raised by West Craven Committee. Although a report has been brought to address those issues are largely civil law matters of land drainage. They're not the matters that are dealt with at the principal stage rather than at the reserve matters stage, and they are covered by the conditions on the outline permission. So my position is that if the committee were to refuse this application or on the basis of drainage, that would result in a likely risk of costs at appeal, as happened at the Lower Greenhill caravan site, which was very similar. There were photographs of the site flooded and concerns raised about downstream flooding in Earby if that site were developed. And the League Local Flood Authority was satisfied with the development, and the Planning Inspectorate, they took the views of the League Local Flood Authority, and they awarded costs against the council for going against those views.
Thank you for that. I understand. Sorry, I understand. Yeah, I don't understand what you're saying, but it says it should have been dealt with at the outline stage, and it's been conditioned in. But them issues haven't really been resolved. And if them issues haven't been resolved or can't be resolved for whatever reason, surely the layout of the site is going to then have to change. Yet we wanting to approve the application tonight, it could have a knock-on effect in terms of the layout in the future.
Through you, Chair, the matters that have to be addressed through the conditions. So they're technical matters that can be resolved. That's the decision at outline, is that these are matters that can be resolved through the conditions, and the conditions are in place to ensure that they are resolved.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, Alex. Yeah. David, you've got your hand up. Is it one you wanted to come back in, or is it an old hand?
It probably is an old hand. However, nobody has addressed the point that the Earby and Salterford Internal Drainage Board have not submitted any comments, and I think it would be completely wrong. I don't know even if they've been consulted, and clearly should have been. But in fact, I'll look through the missives on the planning website now. But without any comments from the Internal Drainage Board, I don't see how you can even come to a decision. I'll have a look on the planning website, see if I can see if they've had a letter.
Well, whilst you're doing that, and Alex is doing that as well, I've got Mike Goldthorpe indicating to speak. Mike?
Thank you, Chairman. There's several issues that worry me about this site anyway, but we're getting a cumulative effect here, irrespective of what was decided on the caravan site. That's that water at the caravan site's heading towards Earby. The water on this site is heading towards Earby. Putting whatever you do with drainage on this site is going to may solve the problem on the site, but it's pushing in the water somewhere else. That's what water does. Now, it's all heading towards Earby at a great rate of knots. How many more of these developments that are going to take place on areas that are currently natural catchment areas for water are going to push it downstream towards Earby? I think it's a worrying point. But I can understand the planning perspective in terms of saying, well, we can deal with the water on the site, but you're going to put it somewhere. And at the moment, Councillor Whip is absolutely 100% correct. There are two issues here. One, the water is going to go more efficiently off-site, downstream towards sunny Earby. And secondly, we have not got the information from the Drainage Board. So, I would be supporting Councillor David Whipp's proposal on this.
Okay, I think somebody shared the letter that went to the internal drainage board. I don't know whether it was Alex or David.
It was me. It was the first one I clicked on.
Right. Can I just check, David? I mean, I've obviously moved approval. In terms of, I assume you're going to not support that. In terms of refusal, on what grounds are we looking to refuse on? So we're clear then for the record.
Well, I mean, I would say that we ought to get the comments from the internal drainage board. They haven't responded, as far as I can see. I did go through the responses earlier on. So rather than throw it out at this point, I would say that we get responses from the internal drainage board, see what their engineers have to say about it, and then we are informed by their knowledge.
Okay, so are you moving different?
After all, they are the responsible drainage authority for this area, not the Environment Agency, not the lead local flood authority or the Environment Agency. It's the internal drainage board.
Okay, so can I just clarify then? Are you moving deferral of the application?
I would move deferral to get their comments.
Okay, fine. I mean, I'm happy at this stage then to withdraw my approval because I sense that wouldn't be carried tonight, and I'm happy to second the deferral moved by Councillor Whip to try and get some consensus on the committee. Alex, you've still got your hand up. I'm not sure whether you want to come back because I intend to move to the vote if that's okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I just come back to say that with the example of the Lower Green Hill Caravan Park application, the internal drainage board did actually submit comments raising concerns in that application, and the matters that the internal drainage board raised in terms of discharge into the water network are matters of land drainage consent that can be controlled through that, and therefore that was considered at appeal, and the council was awarded costs against the council for taking those views into account over the lead local flood authority.
Okay, fine. I mean, I take on board what you're saying, Alex, but I just think for completeness in terms of the application, I think it's far better to wait a month. Let's see what they say, and then at least councillors are well informed. So I'm going to move to the vote, ladies and gentlemen. I'll call your name out. So this is a call for deferral of the application to seek further consultation. If you're in favour of that, if you can say yes. If you're not, no. If you want to abstain, you can abstain. So I'll read your name out and then you can put yourself back on mute. Councillor Nadeem Ahmed?
Yes.
Thank you. Mustawa Arshad?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor David Clegg?
Yes.
Councillor Sarah Coburn-Price?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Tommy Cooney?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Mike Goldthorpe?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Julie Henderson?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Mohammed Iqbal? Yes. Councillor Yasser Iqbal?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Ashad Mahmood?
Yes.
Thank you. And I think you've joined us. Councillor Brian Newman?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Johnny Nixon?
4.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor David Whip?
Yes.
Thank you. I get that to be unanimous decision for deferment. Thank you, Joanne. Thank you. Mike, if you're still with us, you're more than welcome to stop for the rest of the meeting, but I'm sure you may have better things to do with on a Thursday evening. Okay, the next application, ladies and gentlemen, is for Stonefold Farm at Stump Hall Road in Higham. I have speakers for this, and I also have some letters which I need to read out, but I'll take the speakers first in the order that they're written. The first speaker that I've got is Mr. Robin Willoughby. Mr. Willoughby, you've got up to 5 minutes in which to address the committee, and if you get close to the 5, I'll just need to come in and just let you know that you've got 30 seconds left. So the floor is yours for the next 5 minutes.
Thank you. I've lived in Higham for nearly 40 years, and I've been a parish councillor.
Sorry, Robin. I think we're struggling to hear you. You were breaking up then.
Can you hear me any better now?
That's right. I can hear you perfect now.
I've taken my picture off. It seems to make it better, doesn't it? Right. Can we try again?
You can.
I've lived in Higham for nearly 40 years, and I've been the parish councillor for the last 7 years. I know the Sabden Fold Valley and the application site here very well indeed. This valley is known as Pendle's Hidden Gem, recognized.
Robin, we've lost you again. You want to sort your connection issues out, and I'll take the next speaker, and then I'll come back to you if that's okay.
I don't know how to sort them out because if it's not working, I can't do anything about it.
We can hear you again, but wherever you are now, just stop there and talk. We can hear you perfectly now.
Well, there was no difference. I'm very sorry. If this is a real problem, I have or I can send a copy of my submission to Joanne Eccles there. I've got one ready on email, and she could perhaps read it.
That's right. Do you want to give it one last go, and then if we're struggling, then we'll go for that option.
Well, thank you very much for that. We'll try again. I don't understand the problem. We worked on last time, all right. Now, I'll try. I don't know how much you've heard. I've lived in Higham for nearly 40 years. I've been a parish councillor for the last 7 years. I know the Sabden Valley, Fold Valley very well, and the application site itself. I walk there regularly 3 or 4 times a week. This valley is known as Pendle's Hidden Gem, recognized as a special.
Robin, I'm really sorry, but we've lost you again. I think if you could just email Joanne your speech, and then Joanne could forward it on to me, or I'll ask Joanne to read it. But we've lost you again, and I don't know where the problem lies.
Well, it's not at this end, I'm afraid. Thank you very much. I'll try to do that.
Please, if you could.
Perhaps when she receives it, she could indicate it's been received.
That's fine, no problem. I'll bring the next speaker in, who's Becky Morell. Becky, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
That's fine. I can hear you loud and clear.
Super.
Likewise,
Thank you.
You've got up to 5 minutes in which to address the committee.
Thank you. As a resident of Sabden Fold and an objector to the proposed development of holiday cabins at Stone Fold, I was encouraged by Barrowford and Weston Parish's committee decision to reject the planning officer's recommendation to approve the planning application. Having never been involved in any planning issues previously, I was impressed at this display of local democracy at work and the area committee's willingness to listen to the concerns of their constituents, review the facts and opinions before them, and overlay their expertise and extensive knowledge of the local area in order to reach a different judgment to that of the planning officer. The fact that their decision was unanimous is evidence that all of the councillors understood the problems in relation to this specific development. The area committee's reasons for objection were threefold: the unacceptable impact on the AONB, the significant risk to highway safety resulting from the increased pressure on the single track access road, and the lack of required visibility at the entrance to the site. These same objections were echoed by more than 120 people who formally opposed the proposal, including 14 of the 16 households in Sabden Fold. Sabden Fold Valley is renowned for rural charm and tranquility. It possesses unique geological and ecological features, as well as great historical significance. The planning officer may judge that the separation distances are sufficient to not unacceptably impact the visual or landscape setting of the AONB, and others may disagree. But it is a fact that noise pollution from the development will be detrimental. Any resident of Sabden Fold will testify, even the sound of a dog barking clearly reverberates around the valley. And so holidaymakers, revelling in hot tubs, barbecuing with music blaring, would undoubtedly shatter the tranquility of the AONB. The applicant may hope to attract quiet and respectful visitors, but this is simply impossible to control or govern through conditions. The site is only accessible by car and not by public transport, and therefore will inevitably increase traffic on the access road. The planning officer may judge it acceptable for visitors to walk to Higham, but I argue that not only would this be potentially dangerous due to the unlit and unmade surface and steep gradient, it would also prove fruitless as there is no shop or basic essentials there. The reality is that holidaymakers will be completely reliant on their cars during their stays, intensifying the safety risk to other vehicle, cycle, horse and pedestrian road users. Again, a problem that cannot be mitigated through the imposition of conditions. The site does not have the necessary visibility distances as required by law for a 60-mile-per-hour road, and whilst the planning officer may judge that vehicles will not be driven at such speed on this road, the fact remains that they can, and indeed they do, as members of the area committee have first-hand experience of. Who will be held accountable later on down the line if a holidaymaker pulling out of the site entrance, which is only 100 metres from a blind hill brow, has a serious accident and sustains life-changing injuries? And if a condition to alleviate the site access issue is to increase the visibility displays and passing places, it further impinges on the character of the AONB. The applicant says the development will bring in much needed tourist revenue to the area, but the question is at what cost? I agree with the area committee that the cost is too high, in that this development poses an unacceptable impact on the character and tranquility of the AONB and a serious risk to highway safety. And I believe there is nothing unreasonable or unsound about that decision. Surely, if the current pandemic has taught us anything, it is that people need green and beautiful natural spaces to thrive. And as such, there is a moral imperative to protect this special area so it can be enjoyed by future generations as it has been for centuries past. I urge the Policy and Resources Committee to uphold the unanimous decision of the Area Committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Becky. My next speaker would have been Mr. Gary Harper, who sent a letter in and has asked for it to be read, so I will read the letter out as it's written. It says, "Dear Sirs, I've only recently been informed about the above planning application, which I understand is due for consideration at the next meeting of your committee. I request that this letter be read and considered by the committee. I have lived and farmed the land at Stumphall Farm for the past 40 years. Stonefold Farm is over the ridge down a steep track on the opposite side of Stumphall Road from my farm. As the crow flies, mine is probably the nearest property. My access track entrance is almost opposite theirs, and the fields on either side of it, edging Stumphall Road, are part of my farm. I understand that at the area committee meeting on the 30th of July, the applicant may have given the impression that she had been in contact with me and as my agreement to her proposals and/or to any highway alterations which might be required. I must make it clear that is not the case. I've never had any contact with the applicant and I strongly oppose this planning application. I also understand that it has been suggested that the average speed of vehicles on Stumphall Road is no more than 30 miles per hour. I have daily experience of traffic on this road and cannot agree with that. Vehicles repeatedly travel far too fast for the conditions on this narrow and awkward road, and there have been various accidents and near misses. This stretch outside my farm and along to Hilltop Farm is a straight stretch where they particularly get up to speed, and some seem to treat it like a racetrack. Because of the bends on other sections of the road, an average speed for the whole road might possibly be calculated at 30 miles per hour, although I doubt it, but it is considerably more than that on this stretch, which is also dangerous because of the blind brow of the hill and bend approximately 100 metres eastwards from the two track entrances. There is no clear view around the mouth of Stonefold track, and there are obvious traffic dangers which would be made considerably worse if it was in frequent use by visitors unfamiliar with the road. A further problem with the road is that it is being used by increasing amounts of traffic, e.g. including a lot of delivery vehicles, and the road is not suitable for the quantity and types of traffic already using it. Any further regular visitor increase would, again, make things even worse. I wish to register my objections to this planning application, not only in relation to the above road problems, but also the development itself. That part of Sabden Fold Valley is a particularly beautiful, quiet and unspoiled country area, rightly incorporated into the Forest of Bowland area of outstanding natural beauty. 5 holiday cabins, even if partly hidden in the trees, with hot tubs, barbecues, etc., would be completely out of place and would seriously damage the peacefulness and character of the valley. Yours truly, Gary Harper. I've then got another letter which I've been asked to read, and that's from Mr. Norman Mitchell. I'll read that. I am on a number of committees and am founder member of Walking in Pendle for Pendle Leisure Trust, also a founder of the Pendle Walking Festival, a member of the Countryside Commission for Pendle and the Council's Countryside Access Forum. I give talks on the history of the Pendle area and contributed to a number of Pendle tourist publications, e.g. the Jonas Moore Trail in Higham and books on walking in the Pendle area. So I have a vested interest in Pendle tourism. However, after careful consideration, I'm not in favour of this application. I previously sent in detailed letter of objections and I will not repeat all of that, but in summary, my main concerns include, number 1, invasion of this unique and peaceful area with an unsuitable and out-of-place holiday cabin development. Number 2, undesirable noise and visual effect on the whole area, including, from my particular perspective, the six footpaths directly affected, 1 running right beside the site, 2 running diagonally from it up the ridge side, 1 running down the field below, and 2 running parallel to it along the valley bottom and the other side of the valley, respectively. From all of these paths, you can see and will be able to hear this site, and walker enjoyment of this tranquil area will be diminished. Number 3, insufficient regard paid to the exceptional features of this site in the area. In particular, desecration of this unique woodland and pond area within this site and its destruction as a wildlife haven whilst under construction. This development will have far-reaching impact on this ancient woodland and established wildlife during use due to the presence of visitors and noise whilst using the cabins during the day and evening times. There is very little ancient woodland in the area, and this wildlife haven needs preserving. Number 4, obvious access and vehicle problems onto the steep, winding access track and on the narrow single-track Stub Hole Road, where the traffic is already a problem for walkers and cyclists, and this will be made worse with the extra cars and delivery vehicles. Number 5, fire risks from the wood-burning stoves, barbecues in wooden cabins and verandas, an extremely difficult, perhaps impossible fire appliance and emergency services vehicle quick and easy access via the approach roads and into the site itself if a fire emergency occurred. Number 6, rubbish accumulation and disposal not considered. There would be large quantities and collection wagons. Will have greater difficulty to get down the roads and tracks due to the extra visitors vehicles using them. Number 7, waste water and sewage disposal from all the cabins with their hot tubs, baths and toilets. They would have to have septic tanks, and I'm well aware of the overflow and pollution problems which can arise and flowing into Sabden Brook, which is in the valley below. This happened at another development further up the valley. Number 8, walking access to Higham Village from the site is up and down a steep ridge, partially on unclear footpaths which are usually muddy or wet. It is nearly a mile to the village centre and there are no shops when you get there. Visitors would more likely follow the roads and probably go by car, adding to the traffic using the narrow lanes. Number 9, it is a dangerous precedence which could lead to a further destruction of this AONB area. And then finally, number 10, although in favour of bringing tourism into East Lancashire, especially Pendle, I wish to voice my objection to these planning proposals as highlighted in the paragraphs mentioned above. Yours, etc., Norman Mitchell. Joanne, has Mr. Willoughby emailed his letter to you?
The email hasn't come through yet. We're trying to get hold of him by phone. We've emailed him with instructions to join the meeting by phone, and that might be easy. We might be able to hear him that way. But if we get the email, then it'll be brought in and I'll read it out.
Okay, that's fine. The final speaker I've got in terms of members of the public is Mr. Daniel Hughes, who's the agent for the applicants. Daniel, are you with us?
Yep, hi. We've also, as you recall, I've got a statement from Daisy Whitehouse, who was registered to speak, who's the applicant that obviously Joanne said was to read. So
normally I'd give you 5 minutes, but because you're reading a statement out on behalf of Daisy, I'll be quite liberal with the time, as possible, as close to
That's
10 minutes.
fine.
If that,
Well, hers is around 5 minutes. Mine's under 5 minutes, so we should be fine on that.
Okay.
So I'll read Daisy's
Well,
first. Move on to mine in a minute as well. Okay. So obviously, this is on behalf of Daisy Whitehouse. So what am I trying to achieve? I've chosen not to speak at this committee, not because I don't care, but because I found the last committee very hard, as the councillors seem to have already made up their minds. Hope this still gets across my passion for the project and understanding of all the factors that you have to consider, and that you will support the planning department in the recommendation to approve my application. I'm keen to explain the concept behind my idea and the experience we want to create at Stonefold Farm. So my background: I run my own marketing business specialising in leisure and destination. I've worked with huge hotels such as the Lowry, Best Western and IHG Group, alongside local boutique brands such as the Lawrence and Padium. I'm passionate about the experience that hospitality creates and about building something unique that people will remember forever. The Lancashire countryside is staggering, and I believe that for visitors to appreciate it, as we, the residents, do, it must remain as unchanged as possible whilst opening to offer opportunities. What I'm trying to create: I want to create a hidden oasis, a magical place to stay where no one would know was there, much like our house. When visitors come to my house, they often say that they have lived there for years and didn't know the house was there. The cabins should be the same. Even the arrival will be magical. Through the trees, the cabins totally unseen until you enter the site just behind our house. We tend to manage the trees to help existing ones thrive, but also as many are self-seeded and a bit messy. Remove some of the lesser quality ones and plant new indigenous species all around the site. The cabins will be luxurious but in tune with nature and the environment surrounding them. Think great technology, beautiful natural materials, plenty of supplies but no cars driving around the site. We will ask customers to only come in one car and incentivise them to do so. We will incorporate green solutions for heating, etc., with insulation that is fit for purpose. Our dream customer is someone to spend money, single friends or couples and families too. People who want to escape, cycle, walk, visit local places such as Bali and Clitheroe, but they don't want to stay in a hotel. They want to see the sky and hear the wildlife. I'm the dream customer, so I know they exist. I would come here for the exact reasons I explain. What we don't want to create: we don't want to create a holiday park. This couldn't be further from the concept. There's concern that we will attract people who make lots of noise and play loud music. This is very cynical, and I cannot guarantee that these are guests that will not be near my house and my kids, that we don't want that as these guests will be near my house and kids, that we don't want that any more than you do. Why will it work? The Northwest is the third most popular place for Brits to visit in the UK. East Lancs doesn't benefit from this as much as it should. The current travel bans and the growth in staycation are here for some time now, and it's important that we capitalise to make Burnley and Pendle even stronger than they already are. The Pendle Hill Landscape Partnership Sense of Place Toolkit is a perfect illustration of the potential of the market. The map at the beginning of the document even has a house on it. It states that tourism is worth 10 million a year to local economy. They are aiming to double the short breaks visiting. With 3 million people within 2-hour drive and currently a tenth of this audience reaching the summit of Pendle Hill, there is real scope for growth. I'm not talking about bringing all these people to my farm, just a select few of a unique experience. But these stats and those of Visit Lancashire and the National Tourism and Rural Diversification goals all lean towards this being the way forward for rural communities like ours. I understand it is down to you to decide that who are the right people to be trusted with this, so that they add to, not detract from the lives of the people who are already here. I hope I'm one of those people, because I'm a resident and I came here because of the peacefulness. I don't want to lose that any more than any of the people here today do. Pendle has lost a great number of places with accommodation as a result of the closing of the seafood pub company, which is a huge shame. Visit Lancashire told me that all the glamping sites in the region, in fact the country, plus the holiday lets and hotel rooms have been sold out for the whole summer, and the Fence Gate is actually the only high-end accommodation left in the region. It is vital that we bounce back and replace these, because people will go elsewhere otherwise. And the financial reasons: the typical spend of guests is £10 to £15 per head, and we know this can be multiplied by as much as 10 times if people stay over. So even with modest calculations, if we can bring 10 people a week, each day in 3 nights, spending £15 a day in the local economy, that's nearly 25,000 in new money for other businesses in Pendle over the space of a year. So why me? As a PR specialist and local advocate, and keen to really shine a light on this part of the region and its beauty along with the brilliant things it has to offer. This isn't just about my business and its potential. I'm working with a hotelier, Michael Huckabee, who owns the Lawrence Empadium, on a PR campaign for the town. Not as a paid job, but something I feel passionate about. I have so many ideas and so much passion to make this work. I've invested a lot of time and money in this project, and I really hope you can see the benefit it would bring to Pendle. I want to work with you all to always listen to your concerns and always respect the AONB and the countryside and enhance it, not take it away. So I'll just briefly move on to myself. So Chair, members of the Planning Committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak. PWA Planning are the agent for this application, and we wanted to take this opportunity to highlight some points in support of the proposal. Throughout the planning process, the applicants worked proactively with the Council's planning team to make changes to the scheme in order to address any concerns raised. Firstly, in terms of landscape impact, members may have noticed the objection in the officer's report from the AONB officer regarding the thinning of tree. Thinning of tree.
I can just about hear what's being said.
Thinning of tree.
If that's Mr. Willoughby,
okay, thank you.
Just listening.
Bring me back.
Mr. Willoughby, just listening to. Well, yeah, that's it. He's put himself on mute. Right, go on. Sorry, Daniel.
Yeah. So, firstly, in terms of landscape impact, members may have noted the objection in the officer's report from the AONB officer regarding the thinning of tree cover, the scale and amount of glazing associated with the cabins, and the associated impact of external lighting from this. This response, however, was based on the originally submitted scheme. Following the comments, changes have been made on the advice of the Council's planning team to alter the pitches of the cabins, reducing their height and removing significant amounts of glazing. Additionally, a full topographical survey and updated landscaping plan have also been provided, confirming precise number of trees to be removed and the new planting which is to take place, showing any temporary loss of tree cover will be significantly mitigated through the planting of further native species on site, improving both the quality and quantity of trees on site. These considerations have been guided by the Council's planning team and have contributed towards the recommendation for approval. A further point of clarification of the concerns raised of the access to the site of Stumppool Road. The officer's report raises concerns of the acceptability of the visibility displays, noting the displays cannot adequately be judged without the need of a speed survey. It's important to note that throughout the application process, no speed survey has been requested from the planners to overcome any concerns. During pre-application process, it was also confirmed a speed survey would not be required. Despite this, client would welcome the opportunity to provide traffic speed survey information if requested to confirm the acceptability of visibility displays or amend the displays accordingly. However, we hope the details of the displays can be confirmed either by a suitably worded condition or the recommendation on this matter be delegated back to officers to ensure appropriate displays are achieved. It is noted that both conditions 14 and 15 would allow such information to be provided, if necessary, specific to access and displays. In addition to this, visibility displays less than 60 miles an hour can be secured on land owned by the applicant. Whilst comments have previously been raised about the safety of the lane, just 2 slight incidents have occurred on the lane over the past 5 years. In this respect, the application is compliant with paragraph 109 of the NPPF, as it would not have an unacceptable impact on highway safety. We hope the committee will take on board the additional clarifications presented today. Our client has spent extensive time amending the scheme to that presented today with the help of the Council's planning team, which has resulted in a recommendation for approval. We would therefore urge the committee to follow the recommendation. Thank you for your time.
Cheers. Thank you very much, Daniel. Mr. Willoughby, are you back with us? No. Joanne, is he not with us?
He's left, Iqbal.
Has he left? I've also had, not me, but the committee has also had prior letters of objection from Mr. John Horsfall, Linda Lonsdale, Stuart Forshaw, and Mr. Michael Tetley from Higham Parish Council, which I'm not going to read out because obviously they were shared with colleagues beforehand. Alex, before I bring councillors in, is there anything that you need to add based on what you've heard this evening or based on your report?
Through you, Chair. Yes, as set out in the report, the application is acceptable in terms of impacts on the AONB. Highway safety can be addressed by conditions, and concerns raised in relation to To drainage, again, that's something that can be addressed by condition. The noise pollution, that's unless there's something that's a specific direct impact on the residential amenity of a nearby property, that's not something that could be sustained as a reason for refusal. And you know, it's the noise impact of a holiday development is fundamentally no different to that of any other residential property. Fundamentally, a holiday development is a dwelling that has a restriction on its use. So we couldn't sustain a reason for refusal based on noise. Yes, and as raised by the agent, the applicant would be willing to carry out a speed survey of the road if the committee requires that. So if the committee has concerns about the speed of the road and about highway safety, there is the option to defer this application or to delegate it, subject to a speed survey being carried out.
That's fine. Thanks for that, Alex. Okay, I've got 3 councillors who have indicated to speak, and I'll take them in the order that they are. I've got Councillor David Whip, Councillor Brian Newman, and Councillor Ken Turner. David? All right.
Sorry, Chairman. I mean, I understand the concern that people have in this area, and you know, there's been a very thorough exposition of the issues by the speakers. I mean, I do wonder whether, as a committee, we ought to limit any grounds for refusal to the ones that are cast iron, rather than try and throw the kitchen sink of it. I mean, I'm assuming that, you know, in the case of if the committee's minded to reject this application, but I didn't mean to come in quite so early, and I'm more than happy to listen to the discussion from colleagues who are much closer to this.
Okay, that's Brian, Councillor Brian Newman. Brian, are you there?
Can you hear me?
I can, perfectly clear.
Oh, very good. Right, I've had a technical hitch at this end, I'm afraid. Right, okay. I'd like to go back to this, the visibility display by Lancashire County Council. This cannot be solved by conditions. There is no way that this visibility display can be sorted out by conditions. Are you still there?
Yeah, Brian, we're still here.
Right, we've got, there's very little or none at all of public transport. The waste from the site, if it's built, will be tremendous. The road down to the site is not good. I cannot see why this is being accepted by the planning department. Some of the agenda that we've got from it is not true. I know the gentleman nearest to the new development, if it becomes, has not been contacted. I've been and looked at the place, and the safety of walkers on that road will be put in danger by the excess of traffic. And if we have an area of natural beauty for the future of people in Pendle, then this should stay as an area of natural beauty, as it is one of Pendle's jewels in the crown. Okay, thank you very much, Chair.
Are you moving anything, Brian? Or
I will move that this application be refused.
Can I just clarify, please, on what
on the visibility display of the road and the access to the actual development.
So is that, you mean refusal on the grounds of highways?
Highways, yes.
Okay. Is that seconded before I bring
Chairman.
Councillor Kenton?
Chairman, I would
Yeah,
second
David.
that, but I would add the impact on the area of outstanding natural beauty, which I think is a very strong reason.
Okay, Brian, are you accepting what David's suggesting?
I certainly do.
Okay. I've got Councillor Ken Turner next. Ken, are you with us?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I've listened to what people have said, and I commend wholly the comments that have made on the violation of area of natural beauty. And may I point out that NPPF paragraph 172 clearly addresses this matter, and perhaps people may give consideration to that. I would also ask that members of this committee refer to the notes that the agenda that they have, and page 6, paragraph 2 and 3 clearly identify the hidden gem that is this location, and also it is also making quite clear on there that Stumphall Road, and if anyone on the committee, I presume most have actually visited the site to familiarise themselves before tonight's meeting. But if you've been down there, you will agree with me that the road directly from the main thoroughfare is so narrow that rubbish removal wagons will not be able to get down there, and they will have to deposit the rubbish at the end of the road as they do at the moment. And so we certainly must look very closely at that. And the road being so narrow, it only allows one vehicle to come in whatever direction. There are very limited passing points, and there is no provision at all for pedestrians to walk on that road with roads driving with cars.
Can they hear me?
Is now joining.
And in addition to that, Mr. Chairman, I would take you to page 11 on paragraph 1, where there was a discussion on a bat survey, and the bat survey clearly identified the bat roosts that are present in the building that they are proposed to amend. And whilst the suggestion is that the destruction of that roost can be carried out under licence, there is no specific regulation for what they are actually proposing to do, and no to particularly organise it, but certainly a matter that we must give very serious consideration to. My major concern, however, Mr. Chairman, is in fact the visibility display onto the national speed limit road. No one has mentioned, neither the owners or the agent, that in fact that road did in fact have an RTA as recently as the last 12 months with, I believe, some personal injury. And there have been other RTAs as well, Mr. Chairman. I would draw your reference to page 3 and para 1, again, for people, they have them there to see, and which LCC quite clearly have shown the opinion that they cannot achieve the visibility display on the size of on the speed of the vehicles that are coming on that road, and vehicles are travelling on that national speed limit road. Yes, they don't always do 60 miles an hour, but they do at times. If people actually go on that road and actually stand there for half an hour, it's amazing what you can see and the speed of vehicles that are actually processing along that road. The visibility display will require the removal of parts of the area of outstanding natural beauty and will remove them permanently. That would be fine if Mrs. Whitehouse actually owned the land, but she doesn't. And from what I'm now hearing, the people who do actually own that piece of land haven't given their permission to do that. So that she will have difficulty in establishing those visibility displays. If you were to look at NPPF paragraph 109,
on highways that clearly identifies the need for a clear visibility display. It is a 60 miles an hour road on which to travel. People can travel there at 58 miles an hour, which may be dangerous in my opinion on that particular road. However, they are legally within the speed limit of what that road is permitted to be driven on. Now, if that happens, and we are now talking, Mrs. Whitehouse has already agreed that her marketing plan is that they will be generating up to 5 cabins per week, per day, with residents sitting in there. Each cabin, even if she is allowed to have her own concept of 1 car per cabin, will mean there will be 5 cars having to use that road daily. And they'll have to use that road to go to the shops. She did mute at area committee that she was about to provide provisions and facilities for the residents of her cabins to be able to purchase from her, which will mean she'll have to actually set up a shop, which will mean another addition that will have to come through for another planning application at a later stage. But before that happens, you will be having 5 vehicles minimum using that road on regular intermittent times, coming from a blind entrance over a blind hill in order to go to a town to collect their provisions or to go out. That is dangerous. It is dangerous for the residents, it is dangerous for the pedestrians, and it is dangerous for the holidaymakers, and it can very quickly damage the area of outstanding natural beauty, and also damage quite clearly the opportunity of people who would like to use that for a holiday recreational time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would ask that this application is refused. Many thanks.
Okay. Can I just check? Is there any other councillors that wish to speak? I've got Alex wanting to come back in.
Hello.
Chairman,
Can you hear me?
Sorry.
This is Robin Willoughby.
Yes, Mr. Willoughby, I can hear you now.
Oh, right. I'm sorry, I'm only on the telephone, and that's been difficult to connect, but I am available if I could make my submission.
Okay. Yes, I'll allow you to do that now before I bring all the councillors.
Now or later?
Now, please.
Right. Thank you very much. I have lived in Higham for nearly 40 years, and I have been a parish councillor for the last 7 years. I know the Sabden Fold Valley and the application site itself very well, as I walk there 3 or 4 times a week. This valley is known as Pendle's Hidden Gem, and it is recognised as a very special part of the AONB and the Pendle Hill Landscape Partnership area. That is particularly due to its peace and tranquility. This is the only part of the valley which has no road running through it. The application site is remotely situated, right in the centre of this most unspoilt part. It's a unique little oasis of mixed woodland around 3 small ponds, and it dominates the whole area. This development would desecrate all that by introducing these luxury holiday cabins with their verandas and hot tubs that you have heard about, 10 additional parking spaces, illuminated boardwalks, and even an on-site shop, plus all the delivery and service vehicles that would entail. In summer it might be partially screened by trees, but not in winter, and this project is actually predicated on its being an all-year-round operation, and the potential noise and light pollution is fairly obvious. There are extensive objections from 2 parish councils, the CPRE, the AONB and LCC Highways, and there have been various letters which have been written in, and I hope that they have been read. There is also a huge raft of local opposition. You've heard over 100 opponents. They raise many detailed practical issues, but in the time available, I am only going to focus on the one objection which they all raise, and which is also the area committee's first ground for refusal, namely that the development is inappropriate in this special area of the AONB. And I would ask you to pay proper regard to the actual wording in the relevant policies. You've got NPP paragraph 172, which stipulates the key principle that AONB areas have the highest status of protection. And that paragraph, along with Pendle Core Strategy ENV1, then embody that in this essential wording. and I do quote it, in determining proposals which affect the Forest of Bowland AONB, great weight will be given to conserving and enhancing its landscape and scenic beauty. In addition, the proposals will be considered on a needs basis, should have respect for their surroundings and be in line with the AONB management plan objectives. Supplemental to that, the AONB management plan specifies change in settlement character as a key issue requiring justification, and the AONB guidelines mention that landscape and scenic beauty means more than just scenery. It encompasses features of tranquility, ecology, and freedom from pollution, including light, noise, and vehicle pollution. In my submission, this development in this setting is quite clearly a change in settlement character, and it cannot, on any reasonable interpretation, be classified as conserving and enhancing the existing landscape features. By its nature, it invades and damages them, and no planning conditions can regulate, for example, the noise from vehicle usage. So the only question then left, actually, is whether that intrinsic damage is sufficiently outweighed by substantial benefits and is justified on a needs basis. And in this case, that's only a tourism argument, and this is a comparatively small development. Is this development likely to produce significant, reliable tourist benefits? Well, there's been no proven evidence of demand, and its viability is questionable on quite a number of grounds. You've seen possibly a letter from Mr. Forshaw, who's an expert in the hospitality trade over 40 years, and he thinks it would not be successful anyway. And you've got such things as the unrealistic proposition here of all year-round usage, which will not happen. It actually fails to satisfy at least three of the criteria in core policy WRK 5, no significant increase in car usage, unsustainable without car reliance, and no significant detrimental effect on the natural environment or character of the area. And is there a real need for it?
Mr. Willoughby, can I ask you to start up, please?
Could I please have another moment?
Yeah, I'll give you another minute.
Just to say the need for it, just outside this valley, you've got sizable and nice holiday home sites at Roughly and Sabden. There's a wide variety of holiday cottages. There's 2 hotels, fence gate and hired trap. There is no great need for this. Now, the area committee have had the advantage of the local knowledge, and I would submit that you should back their judgment unless they have clearly got it so unreasonably wrong that the council would be faced with a real prospect of having costs awarded against them in the event of a successful appeal. Now, I'm advised that that wouldn't be the case here, whatever the result, where the grounds for refusal are objectively reasonable and proper. So I would ask you to give full value to the special nature of this area, to the overriding presumption of AONB protection, to the overwhelming local opposition, and to the judgment of your area committee, and maintain their refusal of decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Willoughby. Well, we finally got to hear you, and I'm grateful for you to dialing in. I've got Councillor Nadeem Ahmed and Councillor Brian Newman, but Alex, is there something that you need to say before I bring them two in? Alex, you're on mute. Alex?
Thank you, Chair.
Go on, Alex.
In terms of the refusal, the highway safety impact, that can be addressed through conditions. The applicant has made the offer of submitting a speed survey. Lancashire County Council have actually requested that, and that's something that if the speed survey is carried out, that could establish a lesser visibility display that would be acceptable. So if the committee were to refuse the application on that basis, when there is the offer there from the applicant to carry out a speed survey that could address that issue, that could be seen as unreasonable, and we could get costs awarded against us as a council for that, as we have on other schemes where we've refused applications and not allowed the applicant to have a reasonable opportunity to address it. In terms of the
concerns that were raised over ownership of land. The land involved in the visibility display is entirely within Lancashire County Council's ownership. The banking at the side of the road it's part of Highways land, so that's something that would be under the control of Lancashire County Council, and the works could be carried out under a Section 278 agreement with the County Council. There's been no application made for a shop. In terms of, again, raised issues of tranquility and noise, on a development of this scale for what are essentially houses, from a planning point of view, it's a C3 use, the same as a house. It's just restricted in terms of its use to holiday use. So any house could be used as holiday accommodation. This is actually more restricted than a normal house. And so on that basis, the impact on tranquility in terms of Para 172 of the National Planning Policy Framework is more to do with much larger scale developments, much more impactful developments than a dwelling, or than the number of dwellings proposed here. And yes, I think that. Oh, and in terms of the AONB impact, in terms of landscape impacts, they can be addressed by landscaping conditions. The site it's an existing tree-lined garden, so there's been a ecology survey of the land which doesn't identify any great value to the ecology of the site, other than the bat survey that identified the bats in the barn. But that's something that that has been looked at and is acceptable from impact in terms of impact and loss of the bat roost. That's something that would require separate consent from the relevant body. And so in terms of AONB impact, that can all be addressed through conditions like landscaping condition.
All right. Okay, thank you for that, Alex. Nadine?
Yeah, I was, and I probably will still support the recommendation that's put forward in terms of refusal and the reasons given for that. Firstly, the reason, I just want to clarify, the reasons that have been given, firstly, I understand it's highways, and secondly, that is totally out of keeping with the area. But according to what Alex has just said, Alex is rubbishing both them reasons in terms of
he's not necessarily rubbish. He's given his professional opinion.
Yeah, but he's ruling him out. He's saying we're not going to have a leg to stand on. I think that's Alex's position in terms of the reasons given for refusal. But I think they are valid and strong reasons, and we should stick to them, both them reasons for refusal.
Okay, that's fine. Brian, you've still got your hand up. Are you wanting to come back in?
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say again that this visibility display that they're talking about, that Mr. Cameron says can be resolved by conditions, is utter rubbish. It cannot be resolved by conditions. Thank you.
Okay, and then the final speaker on this item before I'll take it to the vote is Councillor Mike Goldthorpe.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just beginning to wonder why we have a designated area of natural beauty. What is the benefit of designating an area? Why do we do this sort of thing? I presume we do it to protect the area, and it's such a real superb landscape, and we happen to have a bit of one. I just find it a bit odd that we are going through this rigmarole of discussing changing things to make it fit. I just don't believe that particularly the cabins are in the right place, and it certainly will not be getting my support. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Okay, as before, I'm going to call your name out in terms of the vote. If you're in favour of the refusal, you need to say yes. If you're against the refusal, no. or you have the option to abstain. Councillor Nadeem Ahmed.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Musawa Rashad.
For.
Councillor David Clegg.
For.
Councillor Sarah Coburn Price.
For.
Councillor Tommy Cooney.
For.
Councillor Mike Goldthorpe.
For.
Councillor Julie Henderson.
For.
Councillor Mohammed Iqbal. Abstain. Councillor Yasser Iqbal. Councillor Yasser Iqbal. Yasser, I can see you're still with us. I'll come back to it at the end. Councillor Ashad Mahmood.
For.
Councillor Brian Newman.
For.
Councillor Jonathan Nixon.
For.
Thank you. Councillor David Whip.
For.
Yasser Iqbal, are you back with us? Joanne, can you see him? I can see him on, well, I can't see him on my screen. Yasser?
Oh, we've just sent him the invitation. We've had to send him the invitation again. Apparently, he dropped off.
Right, okay. Well, I don't think it's so that this application has been refused on the grounds as set out. Can I thank all those members of the public that have joined us this evening? As I've said previously, you're more than welcome to stop for the rest of the meeting, but if you want to leave us, feel free to do so. Okay, that concludes the speakers that I've got this evening, ladies and gentlemen. So I'll move on to the rest of the agenda. Item 5 is the strategic monitoring report. Dean, is there anything that you need to add at this stage?
Not particularly, Chairman. Do we want to let Alex go as well? Do we need to keep Alex?
Is now exiting.
I thought Alex wanted to talk on the strategic monitoring report.
No, he's done a good job. Let's let him go for the night.
Alex, thanks a lot for your attendance this evening. Enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
So, Dean, did you say you didn't have anything?
Becky. I was just trying to.
No, Chairman. I think members are well aware that the last 5 months have been dominated by our efforts in combating COVID, and you'll see that reflected in the report. Some things have been able to move on, but of course our capacity has been constrained as a consequence of our response and efforts to recover from COVID. So hopefully that's reflected in the report and in our performance.
Okay, thanks. I've got two speakers on this. I've got Councillor Sarah Coburn Price and David Whip. Sarah?
I thought this was an absolutely excellent report. It gave a brilliant overview, and congratulations should go to the report author. I actually found no typographical mistakes, which my Tory colleagues will say is a rare thing. But I do have it's thrown up a question that makes me think about the future, because it goes into home working and how many people are home working at the moment. And I'd like to know a little bit more about how that's gone for you, and if it has gone well, might there be changes to council working practices? Might there be so many days working in an office, so many days from home? I just wondered to what extent that has been thought about.
Through you, Chairman, in terms of how has home working gone? Well, from the beginning, when the lockdown came, of course, the instruction from government was that people should work from home wherever possible. So in essence, that's what we did. Where people could do their job from home, then we asked them to remain at home. Clearly, there's some functions of the council where that's not the case. So, for example, refuse collection, street cleansing, those are areas where people have to come into work and do that job. And there were similar jobs like that. But in the main, the majority of office-based staff were asked to work from home and have continued to do so. That did require us to ensure that those people had the capability of working from home. So, for example, ensuring that they had the right IT kit. So those people who didn't have laptops, because generally people work from the desktops, they were provided with laptops. We did risk assessments to make sure people were safe at working from home, and of course we set up networks of communications to ensure that people weren't left isolated working home and that managers could manage appropriately. So using social media, using WhatsApp as ways of communicating, and of course, as we are doing now, using Teams meetings as ways of communicating with people as well. Not everybody's got that at the moment. What we're doing, we're going through a process of ensuring that everybody has a laptop computer. So originally, as I said, the mix was primarily desktop computers and some laptops. Over the last few months, we switched that around and will ensure that everybody has a laptop computer. Everybody moves to Office 365 as we were going to do. It's just sped that up, if I'm honest, and with that comes Microsoft Teams. In terms of the future, it's a discussion I'll be having with the leadership, the members, in the due course, probably quite imminently actually, because we've been working on an agile working policy. One that says that there are actually certain functions of the council where people can remain at home actually and do the work from home. But equally, there are some jobs where it's just not appropriate to do that and they need to be in the office. And clearly, there are people along that spectrum of home working and in work working. And we will look at that to see what works best for us. So that has been thought about, and we are working on that actively at the moment to ensure that we kind of exploit the new ways of working that we've had for the benefit of the council. And to some extent, it's probably, as I say, led to us speeding things up that we're moving towards anyway, and it's forced some things to happen that we're taking some time. So if there is one positive thing that comes out of this, is quite a number of the things that we were doing that were taking some time to get in there have just happened because they've out of necessity to happen. So agile working is one thing. Of course, some of the issues that go with that, for example, with Nelson, the council is a big employer in Nelson and Nelson Town Centre. And of course, if you take the people out of the workplace, then that has a bearing on the local economy. So that's something that we have to think about. I think that same issue applies in other places, like you think about Manchester and London, where a lot of their economies are fed by office workers. Well, if those office workers are working from home, then what's going to happen there? And that same principle applies to us. What we've done has been replicated by Liberator, I should say. So Number 1 Market Street is largely empty as a consequence of people being able to work from home. And it's looking like that the staff there are unlikely to return until probably the new year. Now, just for anybody else, because this is a public meeting, the buildings are occupied, they're not empty. So yeah, there's still people there. So just for that reason. So it is we do recognise there's some benefits of what's happened, and we need to exploit those benefits, but it's not without its issues. Does that answer the question?
I think it does.
Sorry, so I just should say that we've done 2 surveys as well of home workers and in workers just to gauge where people are at with it. So one of the things we're concerned about was people's mental health, isolation, and all that stuff, and what can we do to keep people connected. So we have surveyed people at the beginning, and we've just done a recent survey of people as well to make sure that we're listening to what people say as well.
Okay, thanks, Dean. David Whip.
Thank you, Chairman. In other circumstances, I comment quite extensively on this and probe beyond the report, but I don't think that it's appropriate, and I'll tell you for why. I cannot praise Mr. Langton and the staff of Pendle Council enough for the work that they have done at all levels over the past few months, and especially in the last couple of months when we have been in the spotlight of national agency government attention in terms of COVID-19. and I know for a fact that staff have worked all hours. Mr. Langton has responded to emails from me at 3:45 a.m. in the morning, and I think that's an indication of the extreme stress that the workforce is under. I do praise them for all the work that they've done. I am concerned that people are having to go so far above and beyond what is reasonable that I do worry about people's health. But I wondered if we could put on record from this meeting our appreciation of all the work that they are doing and continue to do and have done since the pandemic struck. And as I say, I would move the report with that as the first part of the resolution. Okay, that's agreed, I think, unanimously by everybody, David. So, Dean, if you can first of all give yourself a pat on the back and then pat all the other staff members on the back. I mean, just to echo the point that David's made, that, you know, there's been a Herculean effort from our staff. You know, sometimes members of the public don't realise the amount of stress that our officers are under. And I think this crisis, certainly over the last couple of months, has demonstrated how resilient our staff are. So, yeah, excellent and job well done.
Chairman, I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful for members recognising what the staff are doing as well. It's I'm loath to pick out people and groups of people. BIM men, brilliant. People have done the grants to businesses in finance and across the board, brilliant. Actually, we paid out 20-some million pounds of grants. The benefits team's brilliant, customer contact team, brilliant, housing team now, brilliant. It's endless. I think it's a whole council approach to this. The committees team, you know, they've had a real task doing this kind of stuff. Brilliant. So it is a whole team effort. There isn't anybody in the council isn't pulling their bit on this.
Okay, thanks for that, Dean. Councillor Ken Turner, you indicated to speak.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'm listening to what Dean has said, and I too can applaud Dean. We've had a number of contacts together. Thank you very much, Dean. What I would suggest is that the concept of working from home, I've had experience with my children who, all four of them, including my son-in-law, are essential workers. And 3 out of the 4 work from home and do it permanently. Now, our staff as well, we see how much more effort workers, well, my family seem to put in than normal working from home. And I'm sure that Dean will have seen similar responses from our staff who work from home and do not relate to working times in the same level, but actually do far more productivity. As a consequence of that, if we were to look at doing this on a more regular basis, I'm not saying full time, but reduced time and hot desk situations, we could find quite an upsurge in accommodation availability. And I appreciate Mr. Langton's concerns on the economy in the town centre, and I can agree wholeheartedly with the reflection of what that could be. But perhaps we could actually look to the concept of thinking of utilising the space that we generate. Places like Elliot House. There are a number of people in and around this area who are desperately short of accommodation. Perhaps the council could look and think about developing that into residential accommodation, bringing more people down, and by living into the town, providing more possibilities of employment into the town, and obviously putting economy back into the town centre. It's a long-term concept, but again, another benefit that can come out of this horrible pandemic that we've all suffered. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just to help you, Ken, Elliot House is no longer in the ownership of the council, but your point about a mixture of residential and commercial in town centres is something that all area committees are looking at and all councils are looking at across the country. But your point is well made. I've got Councillor Nadeem Ahmed next.
Yeah, just want to follow on from what yourself and Councillor Whip have said in terms of the staff. Wholeheartedly agree with the comments in terms of the staff, in terms of Dean and the whole team. Every single person did an absolutely fantastic job. And also in terms of our strategic objective 3, in terms of stronger communities, I think particularly at the outset of the pandemic and the Pendle Community Hub and the setup and the work, how the community really rallied, all from all parts of Pendle, and worked together and supported our vulnerable people in the community and helped thousands and thousands of people. And so I think a big thank you to them as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Cheers. As Chad, you've indicated to speak. As Chad, are you there?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thanks, Iqbal. No, just a couple of questions. First of all, like Dean, pass our gratitude to all staff for all their hard work behind the scenes. I think just generally inquiring, how often do we review that home working, or when is the next review? To see if it's at what stage do we consider it's safe for some staff to come back? Obviously not everyone, but some staff to come back and work from Town Hall or number 1 Market Street. Secondly, on page 6, just wonder if you can give us any further information about the Skipton to Corn railway line reinstatement. And final question is just mainly about the 750,000 funding that's allocated for Nelson Town deal for strategic investment, because that has to be spent at the end of this financial year. And how is that progressing, and where will that money be spent?
Okay, Dean, do you want to quickly respond, and then I'll bring Brian Newman in last.
Yeah, so in terms of staff coming back safely to the building, well, our view is that the building is safe to come back because it is COVID secure, and we've undertaken the risk assessments for that. However, originally I'd intended that staff would come back or start to make their way back to work on the 1st of September. I've now pushed that back to the 1st of October, largely because I want to. We've been developing the agile working policy that we've got, and I'm just not happy where it needs to be. In terms of its being completed, really. It's just been held up because of other things. Equally, the rollout of PCs, laptops and Microsoft Teams, Office 365 to people has been just a bit slower than I'd anticipated. So I've moved it back to the 1st of October. That's not a firm date because it will depend on where we are at that point in time. And equally, I think I want to say to you that the intention is likely that I won't be saying everybody has to come back. It will be a mix of some people will stay at home because it's appropriate, and they can, as councillors have said, could be more productive while they're at home. Some people can do a hybrid, and some people will have to be in work, and it will be a mix of that. If there was one thing I was seeking to do, with one objective I've got, is to have all council staff located or co-located in the town hall. We've currently got a few staff across at number 1 Market Street, finance staff, and I'd rather bring them back into the town hall if I can. So that's the kind of objective I've got in mind. It does require hot desking, but of course hot desking in the current climate is not something we want to do. So it just is something that I'm working on. In terms of Skipton to Corn, I think I can't add any more than what's in the report. In terms of the project has moved on to the next stage of the rail investment pipeline. I can't remember what it's called, but there's 4 stages, and we're now to the 2nd stage, and further work is being done on the business case for that. So I keep pressing for updates on it, but unfortunately there is nothing coming out at the moment. And in terms of the £750,000, the best I can say to you is that it is to be used for strategic acquisitions in Pendle. And because of the nature of those acquisitions, they are confidential because they require negotiations. So whilst I can't give you the specific properties that we're talking about, I think you will know Nelson and know what properties I'm referring to. But it is about, the money has to be spent by the end of March, and we have to, the Nelson Town Deal Board agreed that it was probably best to use it to acquire things that then, when we get further town deal money, we'd be able to do something with.
Okay, Brian, you're sat in the dark. I can just barely see you, and you've indicated to speak. Brian, you're on mute, Brian.
Hello.
On you right now.
Hey there, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Brian.
Right, okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry about the darkness. It does get dark up fence. I'd just like to thank Mr. Langton and his team in Pendle for such a great job that they've done. But I'd also like to it be made that we thank all the volunteer groups around Pendle who have done such a fantastic job in holding everyone together, helping one another rather than falling out with one another. I think it's been a tremendous exercise and it's been very well done. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, colleagues, for those kind comments, and the report is duly noted. The next item is the Pearl Development. Sorry, who's that?
It's me.
Oh, Ashad, go on.
Yeah, just on the, Dean, you talked about the risk assessment that you've done with the staff who are working from home.
Yes.
Just wondering if there's anything in there specific about I'm sure there will be, but just to confirm, like somebody who's got like underlying health conditions and they're a bit more vulnerable. Just generally, I know they're working from home, but still, no doubt they'll be more vulnerable than some other individuals, if you will. Is that part of the risk assessment?
Can I help you on that, Ashad? Where, I think, and Dean will correct me if I'm wrong, where we've identified somebody who's vulnerable or what have you, all care has been taken to ensure that if we feel that the homework is not fit for that person, they've been asked to come to work. But whether there's other underlying health conditions or whether there's other issues, each employee's risk assessment is done on an individual basis. There's no blanket risk assessment. So right. Dean and colleagues have taken that on board, and like Dean said, not everybody's suitable for homeworking, but be rest assured that risk assessments were done on an individual basis for people.
Yeah, it's exactly that. Where they have vulnerabilities, they're identified, risk assessment undertaken specifically on them coming to work, but there's a separate risk assessment just about working from home for everybody as well. So, yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Moving on.
Health conditions.
Yeah, moving on to item 6, which is the Pearl Development Activity. I'm happy to move that we note that. David,
second that, Chairman.
Okay, thanking you. Next one is the Public Spaces Protection Order for Alcohol Control. David Whip.
Thank you, Chairman. These are areas that we originally designated some time ago. The new procedure with public space protection orders means that they have to be reviewed every 3 years, and this is the first review that we're carrying out. Chairman, I think the jury's out as to the effectiveness of these from an enforcement point of view, and I've just got one of our cats joining us, which you won't be able to see because it's black against my black top. But the public space protection orders, the police enforcement hasn't been very great. Perhaps there's a deterrent effect, I'm not right sure. My proposal is, Chairman, that we renew them as they are, and that we await any comments following the statutory publication for consultation, and we take it from there. I mean, colleagues probably across the piece have said, well, could we control other substance misuse issues? And I don't think that that's practicable. And anyway, the police have other powers that they ought to be using in that respect. So I move the report, Mr. Chairman, the recommendations. As I say, it will be subject of consultation, and we'll see what happens after that.
Okay, I'm happy to second that. I've also got an indication from Mike Goldthorpe. Mike, you want to speak? You're on mute, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just to say, the map for Earby is totally unreadable. You can't actually differentiate what is in the exclusion zone, as I would put it. So that's something that we might want to try and look at the quality of the hard copy. But certainly the view of all the Earby councillors, both town and ward, is very similar to David Whip's, in that is wanted to carry on. In Earby we have nearly a total exclusion from one end of the town to the other. Apparently, it's a bit of a linear situation from the top end of Upper Earby, if you want to put it that way, all the way down to Sough Park. But I'm also concerned about where we are at the moment and the rise in antisocial behaviour and a lot of activities in public places. So yeah, I mean, fine, let's go with what we've got. But I think we should be pushing ultimately, and we'll find out what comes from consultation. But I'd like to see if there is any extensions we can do to these plans within Pendle. There may well be. Things have changed. But yes, but I'd like some more clarity on the actual detail. It's very difficult to read the hard copy at least. But I would support Councillor Whip's comments.
That's fine. Point noted, Mike. Thanks for that. Any other comments from anybody? No, I take it we're all happy. Yes, that's fine. Unanimously approved. Thank you. Next one is the Policy Themes Annual Report.
Yes, Chairman, I've nothing really to add to the report. I think it gives a wide range of policy-related activity. I think it's, if I'm honest, it's quite impressive in terms of the range of activity across the board for those areas that are covered in here. So rather than prolong this, if there are any questions, then please happy to answer those.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of the recommendations, there's a recommendation 3 saying that what action and us and our partners would like to take in terms of child poverty in Pendle, whether we'd look to establish a scrutiny group. I think that the suggestion is a good one in terms of setting up a scrutiny group, but not just necessarily looking at child poverty, looking at poverty in general, which picks up more than child poverty. So if we can, I'm happy to move the report and with that addition as well.
Yeah.
Is there anybody?
Second that, Chairman.
Yeah, second that, yeah.
Okay. Mike, you've still got your hand up on that. You still
Sorry, Chairman. I don't want to speak. Thank you.
All right, that's fine. People happy with the recommendations?
Yes.
Unanimously, yes. Thank you. The next one is the council's approach to the prevent duty. Dean?
Yes, again, Chairman, the council has a statutory duty to have regard to stop people being drawn into terrorism. That hasn't gone away despite COVID being around. So what you have here is an action plan. I mean, it is largely about the council working with other partners on this, and there are partnerships both at a Pennine level and a Lancashire level. But equally, it's about using our own staff and yourselves as members and making you and us aware of the issues that we need to be having awareness about and how we report those back into the system as well. I think you're familiar that Prevent is a part of the government's counter-terrorism strategy. So it's a duty we have to take seriously, and we have to produce a plan, and here's the plan for you to consider.
Okay. David?
Chairman, I mean, as Chairman of the Community Safety Partnership, this features in my bag, as it were. I don't think it's any secret that I am sceptical about the whole of the processes around Prevent. I don't want to denigrate the work that's been done in producing this report, but I think a lot of it is box ticking in order to demonstrate that we've fulfilled the duties that are placed upon us. I would really like to see some practical work being done to reduce the risk of people slipping into extreme behaviours. And I don't want to go on because it's too late and we're too busy with other things. But I would move it for the sake of getting it through this agenda.
Well, we need to appoint an elected member, David.
I know.
So I think you've just talked yourself into being that elected member.
Yeah, I was concerned about that.
That's fine. Everybody happy to support David? Thank you. Next one is the community engagement framework. I mean, it's a draft one. So in terms of the drafting, obviously, if we approve it tonight, where does the draft then go?
Well, it is for you to approve tonight as a draft. If you think there are things that need to be added to it, then please let us know. I think we were a bit concerned that what we haven't set out is what do we do next now you agree the framework in terms of what are the actions that we're going to do. So if I could ask members if they've got any particular comments on it to feed those comments back to Wayne Forrest, then that would be really helpful. I think we want to, as COVID has proven, we need to engage effectively with our communities, and to do that, that's why we've laid out the framework. I think we do it to some extent. I think there are new ways which we can do engagement. That comes with needing resources as well, so we just need to be careful about that. But again, it comes back to my point about agile working. There's new ways of working on some of this stuff, and engagement at one level is become easier because we can do it through mechanisms like this. And so it's there as a framework. If members have any particular comments on it, any suggested improvements, then happy to listen to that.
Okay, I've got two speakers on this so far. Councillor David Whip and Sarah Corbyn.
Yes, Chairman. Our group has discussed this, and we've got quite a considerable number of comments in terms of how we would like to see improvements. I'm not intending to go into those tonight. I think we ought to ask each group or individual councillors to come back with suggestions and reconsider it at a future meeting. And so that's what I would propose.
Okay, I'm happy to support that. Sarah? Sarah, you muted yourself.
Yes, I'm struggling today. It's actually just page 8. There is a plethora of communication opportunity there, and I'm looking at many of those as well for the formal consultation of the Combe Neighbourhood Plan. But just obviously missing is social media. They've mentioned all the community groups that I could think of on previous pages. I just think an extra bullet point there in effective communication. There's so many different ways in social media. If you want to get young people, it's Instagram and it's Snapchat.
Okay. Point noted. I mean, if each group can feed into Wayne, please, in terms of additional comments, and then we can pick those up. Thank you very much for that.
Can I just come in, Iqbal? Just one, very briefly.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, obviously we do quite well in terms of engaging with the community, but just following from Dean's point in terms of having these meetings via Teams and getting people involved in the decision-making process. I know some people will be quite good with IT, but there's some people who will struggle to get in touch with the council. So I think we need to maybe look into that.
Okay, that's fine. Point noted. Next one is the hate crime guidance for employees. Happy to do that as a recommendation, David.
Second.
Any speakers? No, fine, thank you. We then move on to items referred from area committees. First one is the deterioration of Pendle's highways, and this came from Corn Area Committee that we relay this to the County Council. I mean, it's rightly a borough-wide issue. So, I mean, we're happy to pick this up, but I'll bring Jonathan Nixon in first to speak and then David Whip.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I raised this at Corn District Committee back in March. It feels like a different year entirely. Yeah, it was basically, I was just talking about the deterioration of the roads in Colne, because it was Colne District Committee. I passed my driving test in 2005, and I've always thought the roads just a disaster, really. Poorly maintained for years and years. Thankfully, Councillor Clegg could provide some history as to why the roads may have deteriorated. Seemingly, well, basically, it sounded like they went on a jolly outing once a year to decide where the worst roads were and where they'd spend money on, basically. So it was local people, well, local councillors deciding where the money is to be spent. The Lancashire County Council money, which was sent to Pendle, and Pendle did it on Lancashire's behalf, is my understanding, if I remember that correctly from the March meeting. So I said, why can't we bring the control of the maintenance of the roads back to Pendle? It was going to be mentioned at the April meeting, but it never happened because of the whole COVID thing. So it's kind of like we are where we are now. We're discussing it tonight. And I'd like, I mean, there's so many local tarmacking companies. I can never understand why there's so many potholes. Colne is full of tarmackers. Why does it take somebody to report a pothole? Lancashire County Council do a white, they spray it with white paint, and then fair enough, it is repaired. But most of the time, potholes, they're not even classed as potholes, so they don't get repaired because they're not at the minimum depth, all this kind of carry on, which is no good because it still ruins the road surface, and your experience on the road is tarnished because of the potholes or the problems on the road surface. So I would welcome other councillors' views on the possibility of bringing the maintenance of the roads in Pendle back, because we're so far from the impression I get, the cynical view I get, is we're so far away from Preston, i.e. the head of Lancashire County Council, that we get forgotten about.
That's not cynical. That's not cynical at all, Jonathan.
And I've long thought that, regardless of who's in charge in London, really, in truth. So anyway, I've kind of introduced it haphazardly there. So I'll silence myself now, Chair, if that's okay, and invite you to bring in other people.
Fine. I've got Councillor Whip to speak, who will no doubt give us a brief tour of why we are here, and going back to the 2009 elections when Councillor Driver came in and told us we weren't fit to run local services. I remember him saying at the meeting when the late John David, bless him, was at Briarfield Community Centre. But David, go on.
Well, of course, I would go back to 1980 and take you through a blow-by-blow account. And Jonathan is quite right, and David Clegg is quite right, in that in the good old days when we had highway agency arrangements, the decisions on priorities were locally based, and indeed in the latter years discussed by area committees. That was all taken away many years ago now, and it's something that I believe was a huge mistake at the time, as well as being able to determine the priorities for repairs. Pendle Council's engineers were able to get much better value for money, and I recall that they would put things out to tender if the county council's own DLO were tendering. Their price would be typically a third higher than the local contractors or regional contractors. So I think the system that we've got now tends to mirror some of the practices that happened in the past, where the county council automatically give the work to their own people, and without wanting to labour the point, pay a premium for that. So the money that is available doesn't go as far as it might, and The other issue that we are suffering terribly from in Pendle is that we never seem to figure very highly in terms of the county-wide priorities. The leader of the county council, County Councillor Driver, always says, "Well, we decide on the priorities based on a county-wide assessment," and apparently the roads in Pendle are pretty perfect, because over the last 3 years there has been very, very little money allocated to repair them. So we suffer from a double whammy. I think there's a lot of inefficiencies in the way that the money is spent, and we lose out that way. But in Pendle, it just doesn't appear that our roads are bad enough. And I mean, I can produce all sorts of statistics to support that. But Chairman, I think, you know, we need to be pragmatic. I think it would be beneficial for Pendle Council as a whole to approach the portfolio holder for highways at Lancashire County Council to see whether there is any possibility of reinstating highway arrangements, and for District Council to be responsible for looking after the roads in their areas with a fair allocation of funding across the piece to ensure that a good job can be done. And I mean, with virtual meetings nowadays, we ought to be able to set that up in short order. And I think we should couple that with a request for consideration of funding allocations to be taken into account too. So I would propose that, Chairman, and I appreciate we could speak at length about this, and I certainly could, but given the circumstances, I think let's cut to the chase, call for a meeting, get round the table, or get round the screen, I suppose it is now, and see what we can do in terms of improving the lot of road and pavement users here in Pendle. It's very much required.
Fine. If all three groups are happy, you know, I'm happy to draft a letter on behalf of all three group leaders, which we can electronically sign and send to County Councillor Eden ahead of any meeting, laying out what we'd like, and then at least it's a cross-party unanimous decision. If Nadim's happy to support that.
It depends what's in the letter, Mr. Chairman.
Well, we'll draft the letter.
Yeah.
And then we'll have a discussion.
Yeah, send it to us. I'll have a look at it. That's fine.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, Brian Newman, you've indicated to speak. Do you still want to speak?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with David and the other councillor, but I also think that the quality of the pothole filling is an absolute disgrace as it stands at the moment. I'm sure that Pendle could do a lot better. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, everybody's happy with that course of action. Thank you. Next one is land at Vernon Street. I'm happy to move the recommendation at this stage that we get a full report to the next meeting on this particular site. People are happy?
Okay.
Yeah.
Second, yeah.
Thank you, Ashad. And then the next one is the waterside play area. Can I just check, is Tony Greaves still on this call? No, I was told he was going to make a guest appearance, but maybe it's too late for him now. David, Councillor David Witt.
Well, I'm not sure about it being too late, Chairman, but he did provide me with a note, and he supports the substantive proposals that are set out in the agenda, and he suggests that the question of the land at the foot of Exchange Street, which is to the left of the map that we have, and it's sort of cut off, be referred to Colne Town Council to see if they have any serious proposals for it. He says it's not urgent, and we could ask the Town Council what their views were, and then determine that in future. So I would move the proposals in respect of the major part of the land, and then ask the town council for their views about the other section.
Okay. Happy to second that. Everybody happy with that course of action?
Yeah.
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 That's fine. Thank you very much. And then the last item on the agenda is the land adjoining number 8 Briarcliff Avenue. Are we happy to support the recommendation from to declare the land surplus?
Yes, Chairman. Councillor Greaves gave me comprehensive history and then typed in capital letters, "This is a useless piece of land and the offer by the new tenants at number 8 should be grabbed with thanks. I would let them have it for a peppercorn for £1. They are public heroes."
That's fine. Well, we'll go with the recommendations based on that. And that concludes the meeting, ladies and gentlemen. Can I thank you for your patience this evening and wish you all, I was going to say a safe journey home, but enjoy the rest of the evening. David, can you just stay on the line, please?
Yeah,